sure what that was. Just heard something kind of drop, and I don't know. I don't know where that came from. Hopefully, that's not something that's a big deal. But welcome. If you got your questions, you can post them. Should be below the video if you're on a smaller screen, like a phone. If you're on a larger screen, like a computer, it should be to the right of the video. Basically, it'll say like type a message or something like that, or join the conversation, it sometimes says. So you just click in that box, and then it will ask you for your first name, last initial. Put that in there, and then start typing your question, and we'll get answered on here. Also want to note, you can post your question at any time, 24/7, and it will be answered during the next office hours. So you don't have to be here live to ask questions. You can ask questions at any time. And then if you're not able to attend live, no worries at all. All you have to do is below the video here, you'll see a little green button that says the archive. What does it say exactly? Let me see. Yeah, view the office hours archive here, that green button. If you select that, that will bring you to the page that has all of the archived office hours. And if you ask let's say you asked your question like Tom did here. So Tom asked this question at 1 o'clock yesterday. It was after office hours, after office hours ended. So it's the question that we're going to start here with today. So it's going to be the first question, right? So if you ask your office hour, or you ask your question leading into the office hours, it's going to be one of the first questions I answer, if not the first question, right? There might be a couple questions that somebody maybe got in before you, but then you can just go to the archived office hours, and right in the beginning, you should be able to see at some point your answer. So got my protein shake here. Just got back from the clinic. Didn't have time to get a lunch here before the office hours, so wanted to get something. Got to get a little protein. So don't mind me. I'm just going to be drinking my protein shake here. But that's good. Peanut butter cookie flavor. Tough to beat that. All right. So we'll start here with Tom A. Says, Clay has talked about tucking the right elbow on the downswing. How exactly does this work? Does it stay at your right side through impact? When I try to do this, I lose a ton of distance. Does the right elbow sort of travel across your midsection through impact? Basically, where exactly is the right elbow at impact, and where is it pointed? So, well, at impact, basically, where's my club here? So at impact, basically, it's going to be like that, right? So it's kind of pointed toward my right hip. Is basically, where it's going to be. It doesn't have to be connected to your body, though. So that might be where you are losing some distance, is you're trying to have it really like tucked in tight to your body. So I'm going to really simplify it for you. It's very, very easy once you kind of understand this concept, how kind of the right arm, is going to work. So it's very, very much like skipping a rock across the water, right? So if I were to grab a ball here and pretend like it's a rock that I'm skipping across the water, right? Well, first and foremost, intuitively, how are you going to angle your body? If I was going to skip a rock across the water, I'm intuitively going to angle my body away, because I won't be able to get this angle with my arm if I don't do that to be able to throw, to have an angle of attack basically of this ball that would make it skip. If I go like that, well, I'm just going to throw it straight down the water. It's not going to skip, right? Or it's not going to skip very far. It's not going to be a good skip, right? So if I'm trying to get as good of a skip as I can, well, look what happens, right? Let's say I'm trying to do this as powerfully as possible. Well, what I'm going to do from this angle, right? I'm going to turn my back away, just like I would as getting a big shoulder turn, getting my good power turn, right? I would get this up here. Now, the position of this is interesting because it's very much like a golf swing as well, right? I have what I would call a 90-90-90 position. So it's not technically 90-90-90, but it's just a good way to think about it. So when I say that, I mean 90 degrees from here to here. I'm making an angle between my upper arm and my side. I got a 90-degree angle at my elbow joint here, and then kind of a 90-degree angle at my wrist. Now, technically, this is not 90 degrees. It's actually like 60 degrees, right? And this doesn't have to be exactly 90 degrees. Generally, this is going to be very, very close to 90 degrees. It's going to be very, very close. I see oftentimes a lot of people get this arm really, really scrunched up like this, right? It's not going to be a very powerful position. We want to have that nice and wide away. So again, if I'm bringing this back, this is kind of like what the top of the golf swing would look like with my right arm. I'm going to get my momentum moving forward, and I'll show you this from the face on as well. But I'm going to get my momentum moving forward, and I'm almost going to kind of feel like I'm leading with my elbow, right? Because if I were to throw this powerfully, I wouldn't do that. That wouldn't be very powerful. I'm going to lead with my elbow, and essentially I'm kind of lagging my arm back, right? So I'm here, and then I'm pushing into the ground to rotate my body, and then I'm letting it go. And that's essentially what we're doing in the golf swing, because we're actually throwing the club into the ball, right? So from face on, right, if I'm trying to get as big a skip as possible, I want to throw this with a lot of speed, and I want it to be kind of at that angle. It's very much like swinging a golf club. I'm going to get my body angled away. I'm going to turn my body. I'm going to turn my back to the target. I'm going to get my momentum moving forward. I'm going to land into that lead foot. I'm going to push into the ground to start unwinding and opening up my body. And as I do that, my right arm, intuitively, if we kind of think about this, is going to move toward my side. It's not going to pin necessarily to your side. It's not like I'm actively trying to push my arm into my side. I'm moving it closer, right? So that's kind of what the tuck is I'm moving it closer to my body, right? I'm not pinning it to my body. I'm moving it closer to my body, and I'm opening up and I'm letting it go out in front, right? So if you kind of think about like, right, that would kind of be like impact. So you can kind of see how my elbow is kind of pointed more toward my back hip here. And I got my wrist kind of bent back a little bit here. And I'm straightening it out into that release position out in front where I let it go as my body continues to open up. So I would bet you that if you just took a golf ball, or you went out, if you got a pond or a lake in your backyard or whatever, and you skipped a rock, you would probably, and did it kind of like, did it try to do it powerfully, right? Took the step, got your body angled away, kind of threw it sidearm to kind of get the rock to throw kind of level, so that way it can skip on the water. You would most likely move your arm intuitively in the way that you would want it to work in the golf swing. So I've literally had people do this at in-person lessons, where I've had them take the golf ball at the driving range. It might seem kind of silly, but I'm telling you that this really helps you to get the feeling of this. Take the golf ball like it's a rock, like at the driving range, and throw that thing like you're skipping a rock. And every time I've done it, every single person has moved their trail arm in a way that would be very good in the golf swing. I've never seen anyone go like this, or get their elbow going way out away from them and things like that. I see people do it in their golf swing, but I don't see anybody when trying to skip a rock tend to do that. All right. So then comes the question, well, why can I skip a rock like this or throw a golf ball like this, but then I get a golf club in my hand and I can't do it, right? Well, you have to investigate the reasons as to why. I wish it was like a cut and dry thing, like, oh yeah, it's just because of this. Now there are some things that are common that I can kind of go through here, but there's nothing that's like that's how you fix it, cut and dry, good to go. That's all you gotta do. It's simple. Unfortunately, it's not like that. So I wish it was, but unfortunately it's not. So one of the main things that I often see is the club face is open, right? So if we have the club face too open as it's coming down, we're going to tend to react to that in our swing. So one way that I can react to an open face is to come over the top, right? And by swinging my club more out to in and to the left for a right-handed golfer, that's actually getting my club face to point more in the direction of the target. So if I have a very open face and then I shallow out the club and do all that stuff, maybe I'm shallowing out the club beautifully, but my club face will just be absolutely wide open and you'll just hit everything to the right. Intuitively, you're not going to do that. So what you will tend to do is my club face will be open. So I have to kind of move my arm out away from me to get the path of my club to kind of work out in to get the club face pointing more in the direction of the target. So that would be often, something that can be going on. Sometimes, we just get to where we're, I talk about that bunched up position where maybe we're not really turning very much and we're kind of getting to this really, really bunched up position. We're really bending our arms. Well, you think about it. If I'm trying to throw a ball from this kind of position, it's just not going to be very powerful, right? I just not going to get a lot of power from that. But if I was like this, well, now I'm in a position where I get some power. So we want to make sure that we're getting a nice, good turn. So that way we don't feel like we have to bend our arms, because the reason why people do that is to make the club travel farther. So if you imagine, let's say I don't turn very much, and then I go like that. So I don't turn very much, and I've got like this scrunched up, bent arm position here, right? Well, from here, I'm gonna do that, right? And you're not gonna do that move like we talked about, because you're gonna try to get power in some way. So if I were to have really wide hands and only, let's say that was kind of my swing, and then I have wide hands, well, look, that's all the longer my golf swing is. So I'm just not going to get any power from there. So from here, I want to make sure that I get a good turn, right? So that way I can have some space with my right arm and have that powerful kind of throwing motion with my right arm. So I'm okay with, some bend in that lead arm. There are top players that have some bend in that lead arm. Angel Cabrera, who just won a Champions Tour event, first event back after, coming back into the mix. We don't need to talk about any of the other stuff, but pretty incredible. But Angel Cabrera has a bent lead arm. It's not crazy bent. It's like that, right? He looks like that at the top of the swing. But you can see how I can still have a little bit of bend in that arm and still have this arm in a powerful spot. It's when I'm going like this. That's when it's an issue. And most of the time, I would say probably 95+% of the time, the reason why people are bending their arms is to lengthen the swing from lack of a turn, right? So we just want to make sure that we're getting a good turn. So if you're in that situation where you're not getting a good turn, several things that you can do. Typically what I see is we're just not unlocking the lower body. So let's flare out the feet a little bit. Get the feet flared out. That's the first thing, because if we have, let's say we set up pigeon toed, imagine that. We got our toes angled in and try to rotate, try to get a big hip turn from there. Like even doing that, I just felt like a pinching pain in the side, inside of my hip here, right? So if you flare out the feet, that just opens things up and allows you to rotate much more easily. So that'd be the first thing. And then as we kind of continue to go up through the body, I want to go ahead and let my right leg, my trail leg here, straighten out to push my hip back and around. I find that a lot of people just try to keep their flex in their knees. They don't really let that flex change. We got to let that trail leg straighten out a little bit to get that hip going back around. We also, if we're looking at the lead leg here, I want to go ahead and let my lead leg move in. I find a lot of people try to keep that knee kind of in that same place. They don't let the knee come in. Well, if you do that, you're going to really restrict your turn and ultimately your power, and you could be leading yourself to make compensations later in the swing, like bending the arms too much, right? So go ahead and let that knee come in, right? That's going to allow you to turn. And as well, there's nothing wrong with letting the heel come off the ground. Now, I tell people that sometimes, and then they start doing this a little bit, right? We don't want to just lift the heel to lift the heel. That's not going to do anything. In fact, it's actually going to restrict your turn if you're going like that, because again, I'm keeping my knee out and I'm not letting it come in. What you want to feel like is that your lead hip is pulling your leg in. So it's pulling that knee in, it's pulling that heel off the ground because you're getting such a turn, and you're allowing the freedom of your knee and your heel to come off the ground from getting that hip turn. So that's kind of the feel that you want to have with it. That's typically going to help you to unlock to be able to get that big turn. Because a lot of times when I see people who struggle to get a turn, it's just because they're locking up that lower body. They don't let the lower body move very freely. They're trying to keep everything kind of all the flexes and everything the same. And I understand why people do it. It's like if we have less moving parts, then we we may be more successful, right? Because there's less degrees where we can get off. But the problem is with that, when people do that, they typically make up for it somewhere else, right? So maybe you're locking up your lower body, but now your arms are bending. Well, now you're creating more degrees up here, even though you're restricting them down here. So you're not, in the grand scheme of things, you don't really want to do that. You want to go ahead and free yourself up to be able to get some power, right? And like I said, I like to free up the lower body. I don't mind a little bit of bend in that lead arm. We just don't want to get excessive to a point to where we're over bending that trail arm. Because if we overbend that trail arm, we're not going to be able to do a tuck move very well. Your arm's just going to want to do that when you start down, and that's going to be a steepening move in the start of the downswing. It's the opposite of tucking, right? Because I'm going to do that, right? When what I want to do is that, right? So that's essentially what the tucking is. Hopefully that let me know if that doesn't jive with you. I can try and maybe come up with another way to explain it. Let me know exactly if there's some part of that doesn't quite make sense, and I'll do my best to help you out. But that's the way I like to think about it, and I think it's really, really helpful for most people. So let's keep the questions coming. We got plenty of time left here. I'll stay on here till 4. Everybody must be watching the Masters, not asking questions on here. Well, with that being said, I haven't got to watch any of it today. Let's just see who's leading right now. Masters leaderboard. See what we got. See if my picks are coming through. All right. I did have Connors up there. We got Rosie on top at the moment. Dang, 6 under through 10. Lighten it up. He's birdied the last 4 holes, it looks like. Wow. Connors finished 4 under. Awesome. He was one of my picks. I thought about picking Hatton. He's 4 under. Scheffler's 4 under. What else we got here? Hatton. Rye. Wow. Rye, they were talking about him. This is his first Masters. Some people were talking about him being a sleeper. Might be true. Harris English. Jason Day having a solid round. Awesome. I don't think he's been playing super good lately, so good to see Jason Day in a better spot. Good to see Fitzpatrick. I know Fitzpatrick really hasn't been. I don't think he's been playing real great lately. Is that Cameron Smith? Yeah. Good. I picked him. That's solid 71 today. Nice. Let's go back to that leaderboard. Bryson. I'm sure he'll be in the mix. Couples. Timeless. I mean, that guy, he's coming out. I almost picked him because I do 2 pools. I do one where it's a really cool, fun one. I have a bunch of people are in it, and basically you pick the 4 majors and the players, and then you pick 5 golfers, and I think it's the top 4. They take the top 4 scores, and then you can't pick the same golfer any time. So if you pick somebody for the players, you can't pick them again throughout the whole entire time. So you kind of have to strategically think like, oh, I want to save this player for because there's going to be players. Some players play better in the Masters than they do in other things, and some players play better in the Open than other tournaments and things like that. So you kind of have to strategically use your guys for when you want to do it. And then I do another one where you could pick the same golfers every single time, And again, we do it for the players and all the majors. And then you get a salary cap, right? So every player has like a value. So I think Scotty Scheffler is like the big favorite, for it. He's at like 12,400, right? And that's a big. You got to pick 9 golfers with 75K, and you pick one golfer that's 12.4. I did pick him because I think he's going to win. But yeah, it was. I did that one. So trying to think here. I got Connors. I got Scheffler. Go down the list. I got Cameron Smith, Patrick Reed. He had a solid 1 under, it looks like, today. Berger, I picked. It's like McIlroy's 1 under. I didn't pick him. He was the second favorite, and I couldn't afford picking him and Scotty, so I had to pick one. Zach Johnson, wow, shot even par today. Morikawa I picked. Oh man, he was 3 under at one point, and then he didn't finish strong. It looks like, but it's too bad. He looks like he had a great round going and just kind of tripped a little bit coming in. So Oberg is even. Lowry. And going down the list here. Spieth 1 over. Adam Schenk, boiler up from Purdue. Met him once, long time ago when he was playing at Purdue. Nice guy. Sanders 1 over. Rahm is 1 over. I picked Rahm. Hopefully he picks it up a little bit here. Zalatoris, I picked him too. He's 2 over, huh? He was 1 under at one point. Again, another one just didn't really finish real strong. Oh yeah, he doubled 13, it looks like. Dang. All right, well, I won't keep going down the list here, but just wanted to kind of get an idea of what the standings are. So Tom A says, thanks, Q. I was recently using the AI tools on TrackMan, and it looks like I'm delivering the club head underneath the consistency cone. Any idea why that might be? To be honest with you, I don't know what that is. I don't really work with TrackMan, so I don't really know what that is referring to exactly. The consistency cone for what exactly, right? Is there a certain parameter that they're using there? Any idea what that might? Is it possible to shallow it too much? Yes, it is absolutely possible to shallow it too much. If you're seeing your club path go more than 3 degrees into out, you are shallowing it too much. Too much. Oh, I thought you were talking about how TrackMan was showing you a consistency cone. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, if you're under or over the consistency cone, you're shallowing it too much. You're more than likely your club path's going to get too much from the inside. So, the best players, their club path is very neutral. It's like plus or minus no more than 3. And ideally you would be like 0. And then their face angle. So these are kind of the numbers that you want to. I know TrackMan can be very overwhelming because it's so much data, and it's like they're adding more data all the time, and then there's also a lot more kind of average Joes using it. Like it used to be like TrackMan, just instructors use it to help teach, and they knew what all the members meant, and then they kind of translated that to the student in ways that are more easily digestible, right, to someone who doesn't know what all this stuff means. And now it's like they've got more data parameters, and there's more people that are using it that don't know it, and they shouldn't know because it's not what they do for a living, right? So what you want to kind of pay attention to is face angle. So face angle, that's the direction the club face is pointing at impact. We want to get that face angle very close to 0. So if it's 0, that means that it's dead square to the target, right? So if we have our face angle very close to 0, and we have our club path very close to 0, right? So club path is in to out, out to in, like how the club is working through impact. So if I shallow, so let's say I shallow too much, right? I got it way back here. It's way too shallow. Well, my club path is going to tend to be too much into out. So for right-handed golfer, too much out to the right. So when that happens, you're going to tend to not hit it very straight. You're either going to hit if you hit it straight, it's going to be a block out to the right. If you get the face too close to get it to come back to the target, it's going to be a hook. If your club pass too much into out, your best case scenario is going to be kind of like a sling and draw, right? If you hit it solidly. So yeah, we definitely don't want to over shallow out the club because that can lead to issues. So again, we want face angle 0, we want club path 0, and then there's another parameter, data point that combines the two that's called face to path. And what this is, it's the ratio of your club face to your club path, right? So let's say I'm swinging 3 degrees into out, and my club face is 3 degrees closed. That's going to be a face to path of 6, -6 actually, because my club face is 6 degrees closed to my path. The bigger the difference between your face and your path, the bigger the curvature is going to be. The closer they are together, the less curve you're going to have. So we want to have 0 face angle, 0 club path, and 0 face to path. If we have that with a nice center face strike and ball first contact, you are going to get a dead straight golf shot. Right? So that's really kind of the main things as far as accuracy is concerned. For distance, what you would be looking at is your club head speed, because that's the limiter, right? If I don't have a certain club head speed, my ball can only go so far with a certain amount of energy, right? Your club head speed is the energy that you are providing. So if I want to hit the ball farther, all things equal, I have to have more club head speed. Now, you can de-loft it, right? That's why your 8-iron goes farther than your pitching wedge, right? Because it's less loft. But that's not how I would really recommend trying to hit the ball farther, unless you're just someone who's really kind of coming in like this, right? If you look like this at impact, you have shaft lean, right? It may not be a ton. It's not pro level. You may not even need pro level shaft lean, but you have shaft lean, which means you're going to be capable of hitting some good shots, right? So adding speed would be a better thing for you to do. And then I wouldn't work on shaft lean unless you feel like you are hitting the ball too high. If you're hitting the ball too high, then that means that you have enough club heads. You probably have too much club head speed for the amount of, or you don't have enough shaft lean for the amount of club head speed that you have. We actually ran into this at the clinic this weekend or this week, today and yesterday. We had a fella that got his club head speed up quite a bit, but his impact position with his wedges, I mean, it was like this. And he got up to where he was swinging 108, 109 with his driver. And I'm telling you, you hit a wedge, you hit a 60-degree wedge with an impact position like that, and the kind of speed that he had, you're going to hit the ball a mile in the air. It's not really going to be a very functional shot. Now, if you need to hit it way up over a tree, yeah, that's going to be great, But if you want to compress the ball and have more control of your wedges, then, or just your clubs in general, you'd want to probably have a little bit more shaft lean. So we actually did we did some work with it. Where did I'll have to grab this. I think I left it in my bag. Sorry, I had to grab my blue brick. I had it in my bag yesterday because I was using it at the range. But So basically, there's a setting on here that's it's called the wedge impact position. So it's the hole that's in the middle of the blue brick. And basically what you do is you would get the blue brick to where it's facing you, to where you can read straight up and down on here. And basically you put it in there like this. I'll try to move it out of the way a little bit so we can see. So basically with a wedge, now this isn't with all clubs, this is really just a wedge where they have the most amount of shaft lean. A high level player, a tour player, pro, will have a wedge impact where the shaft kind of matches this, right? So the way that I kind of like to practice this is I like to kind of get in the ball would go right in the middle of the blue brick where it would be positioned, right? And what I would do is, like, if I'm hitting a pitch shot, so I like to kind of have my feet pretty close together, my body a little bit open, and then have my body forward and keep it forward. But I kind of simulate that impact position. Like that's where I'm trying to get down to. So I'm simulating that. All right. So now I'm going to go to my address position, and then I'm just going to try to get right back into that position to where I'm leaning forward. Right. So this is a great way to kind of get the feel for that. And I'm telling you, he did that, and then he scaled it up to longer swings, and he was hitting, basically he told me that he had a 56-degree wedge and he couldn't hit it 80 yards and he has a lot of club head speed. Like, he was swinging fast, he's swinging his driver 108 miles an hour. Obviously you're not swinging a wedge that fast. It's a shorter club. It's not going to move as fast, but he still has plenty of speed. And he said it just went a mile in the air. So basically he got some shaft lean, and all of a sudden these 56-degree wedges were going super long, like way long, with less effort and lower, more controlled, because he got into this better position. Now, here's how he was able to do it. It's not always as easy. You might be saying, well, what's the secret, Q? How do you do it? But for some people, it is a little bit easier because there's something that we're kind of unlocking to get you there. But this fella had a very weak grip. So what I mean by that is the top of his thumb is kind of running down the top of the shaft. And he has trail hand kind of on there like this. So if we kind of give you a close up of this, you can see how that's a very weak grip, right? So the reason why that's a problem is because it's very difficult. If you make that really weak grip and then you try to get into that position, it's not easy. Like, look at how much I have to bow my wrist to make that happen. Now, if that's something natural and very easy for you to do, to bow that wrist, by all means, go for it. That you can do that, but it doesn't have to be that difficult. And if you just strengthen the grip, well, now I don't have to have a bowed wrist, so I can just have my lead hand a little bit more on top, trail hand a little bit more under. You switch his grip to something more like this. I'm telling you, you get to that impact position again, and that's just so much easier. I have basically a flat wrist here, and it's just so much easier. So now I can just make that swing, and I don't really have to really bow my wrist a ton to get there. And it just became a lot easier for him. So if you're really scooping the ball, like you're coming in and scooping it, your wedges are going a mile in the air, and you have a really weak grip, try a stronger grip. Get that lead hand more on top, get that trail hand more under, get that stronger grip. It's much more natural to have the hands more in front. The reason is that when you have a really weak grip, you've got to get that club face back to square somehow, right? So what people will do is they'll stall their body so that way their hands can get the club head to catch up, right? And that's going to be a scoopy motion. Whereas if I have this club face more closed, just by having a stronger grip, well, now if I do that scoopy motion, look at my club face, it's going that way. So I actually want to have my hands more in front to square up the face, right? So it's much more intuitive to make that happen. So if you have a really weak grip, I understand it's very comfortable for a lot of people. And here's where it comes from. So when you're in your setup, the most comfortable position to be in with your grip is weak, right? Because symmetrically and comfort wise, it's gonna be a weak position. So if you think about it, if I'm just trying to hold this club straight up and down, and then I just naturally go to hold the club like that, look at what kind of grip I have. I have a weak grip, right? Well, now if I want to hold the club straight up and down like that and be in like a comfortable kind of square position, well, then if I have a strong grip and I try to do that, well, now this is very uncomfortable, right? Because this is all tensed up. My lead wrist is in like a awkward kind of position. Like it doesn't feel very good. So to use a stronger grip, relax and just let your hands be more forward. And you might be thinking, well, should I not have my hands, shouldn't my hands kind of not be that forward? You don't want to have a forward press at a dress. You certainly can. There's no problem with that at all. In fact, they did a research on this. I believe it was the company that makes the DST compressor. They tested people and they found that if you start with shaft lean, you will tend to be more likely to have shaft lean at impact. So that's even more reason to have the hands a little bit more front. And the reason I think that is because when you have a stronger grip, you're going to be more comfortable with your hands in front, and it's going to be way easier to get the hands in front with a square face at impact. So people who have the club right in front of them are going to tend to have a weaker grip, and those people are going to tend to scoop to get the club face to square up. They're not going to tend to do what the top players do with weak grips. So there are great, fantastic players that have weak grips that that play great, but they're doing things in the swing that most recreational golfers don't, and that's the bowing of the wrist. This is not an easy thing to do. Part of the reason why it's not an easy thing to do is because it doesn't feel as powerful, right? The reason is that if you make a fist with your lead hand, right? Let's clench that fist as hard as you possibly can. Well, when you do that, naturally, what position do you have your wrist in? It's pretty flat, right? So now, have it like that. Now bow your wrist. It's hard to do. Like that's probably as much as I can bow my wrist without having to lose pressure in my hand, right? So that has to do with power because your speed is really directly related or very, very closely related to how much force you can put into this handle, right? So if I can't put a lot of force into this handle, then I can't swing this club very fast because it's just going to come flying out of my hands, right? So you're only going to swing as fast as you can to hold on to the club. So if you bow your wrist, you're going to lose some speed probably because you're typically not going to be able to put as much force into the handle. So something to keep in mind there. Now, obviously, if you're bowing your wrist and you got tons of speed and it's working for you, I don't have any issue with that. Like I said, there's lots of great players that do that. It's just when I see the typical golfers, the golfers a lot that I work with a lot, top speed golf members generally, right? The bowing of the lead wrist is a more difficult thing to do. So that's why I recommend kind of having a stronger grip, having more neutral, easier to achieve wrist angles. So long answer to a fairly simple question. Yes, you can absolutely shallow out the club too much. It's like if you're taking aspirin for a headache, right, or Tylenol for a headache, right? How many Tylenol do you take? 2 probably. Well, that's probably going to get rid of your headache. But if you took the whole bottle of aspirin, right, that's going to get rid of your headache, but it might create other problems, right? So it's kind of like that. We want to get the club shallow, but we don't want to overdo it. You don't want to take the whole bottle because then that can lead to the problem. So yeah, that's what the consistency cone is for, right? Sorry for the misconfusion there. I thought the consistency cone was maybe something that some new TrackMan. You're talking about using the TrackMan AI tools. So, but yeah, the consistency cone. We want to keep that club in there. If we got that club in the consistency cone, more than likely your club path is going to be pretty close to that neutral. Usually no more than plus or minus 3 if you're in that consistency cone that you draw in there. But keep in mind, the camera angle has a lot to do with that. The reason why I mentioned that is because I have a lot of students that I do online students or online lessons with, and they send me the wrong camera angles all the time, right? So we want to make sure, in order for that consistency cone to be accurate, you have to have that camera lined up down your toe line. So when you're looking at that, make sure that you put an alignment stick down, line up your camera with it to where it's straight up and down. So kind of, you can see how this is straight up and down on this video, right? So straight up and down is where you want the camera set up. Now this camera is too high and it's too close, but generally you'd want the camera to be at like hip level here, and then you'd want it to be far away enough to where you and the club stay in the frame throughout the entire swing, right? So you can see here, if I stand here, it's too high because it's like at this level. And then also, you know, when I go up to the top, you can't see my club, right? My club head's going out of the frame. So now if it goes a little bit out of the frame, it's not that big a deal, but ideally you and the club would stay in the frame throughout the entire swing. So if you have that, then you can use that consistency cone. Really what I like to use is what's called the shallowing line. And that's the line when you get the camera set up good. It goes from the ball up to the middle of your elbow. And ideally what we would see is we'd see that club track just underneath that line as we're coming in. That's ideally what we would see there. And typically that's going to lead to a pretty neutral, a pretty close to zeroed out club path, which is ideal, right? That's what we're looking for. That's what we talked about. So again, the TrackMan, we're looking at face angle, club path, face to path. We're looking at speed, club head speed. Ball speed would also be something that you would like, especially with the driver. You would want your ball speed to be 1.5 times your club head speed. So if you swing 100 miles an hour, a good ball speed would be 150 miles an hour. That would mean that you had a very efficient strike, meaning you hit the sweet spot. I believe TrackMan now has technology that it will tell you the strike location. That's also something that you would want to pay attention to. I haven't tested this. I don't know how accurate it is. I have used it. I use GC Quad, and which is a photometric, and it does tell you where the strike is on the face, but it kind of shows you like a cartoon kind of image of it. And then if you don't have the dots on there, the stickers on there perfectly, it can be a little bit off. So what I like to use is good old fashioned foot powder spray. Get yourself some foot powder spray. This is what I recommend. Dr. Scholl's Odor X. There's also this stuff that's called strike spray that, from all I can tell, the only difference is the odor. Like this is going to have a foot powder odor, right? And then the strike spray is somewhat odorless. It's slightly more expensive. Last I saw, you can get it on Amazon, 3 cans for $35. They're 8-ounce cans, and cost per ounce, it's a little bit more expensive. So this is 4.7 ounces, and I think it was like $6, right? So you're looking at 11 and change per can for an 8-ounce can, and $6 basically for a 4.7 ounce can. So per ounce, it's only slightly more expensive, the strike spray, but you just have to buy a higher quantity. Get it on Amazon. That's where you can get it. But I think I've seen it in like PGA stores, PGA Superstore, and things like that. If you're close to one of those, but yeah, stuff works great. Spray it on the club face. I like it because it just shows you exactly where you hit it on the face. There's no guessing like, oh, was that a little bit off or anything like that. It just gives you instant feedback. The other way I like to look at it is the dot method. So basically, or marker method, marker dot method, whatever you want to call it. So you take a dry erase marker and you put a dot on the ball. You face that dot toward the club face at address. You hit that ball, dot rubs off on the face, shows you where you struck it on the face. Now, we'll say if you're hitting off a real turf and you're chunking the ball a lot, it's probably not going to show up on the face, and probably the foot powder spray probably isn't either because it's going to rub off. So, but if you're on mats Definitely recommend that. One thing I will say, if you're hitting on like a public driving range or something like that, summer driving range, ask them because they might get a little upset if you're marking up their balls. So just ask, if they mind if you do that. Um, the other place I would not recommend doing it is if you're hitting into like an impact screen where like, there's a projector screen, because the marker that's on the ball, it will rub off on the screen, and you don't want to get a bunch of marks on the screen. So use foot power spray in that situation. Foot power spray is not going to hurt the screen or anything, and if any, there won't even really hardly be anything that gets on the screen, because there won't really be hardly any left on the ball by the time it gets to the screen. So, but those would be kind of the things: strike location, ground contact. Unfortunately, TrackMan's not going to tell you where you're hitting the ground. So I recommend a divot board. Divot board is the best tool out there to show you where you're hitting the ground. They're the best that I know of. Maybe somebody invented something and has something in the works that's better than this, but right now, this is the king of showing you where you're hitting the ground. So if you're not familiar with this, basically the way that it works, it's like sequence essentially. So you set the ball on this yellow dot, you hit the ball, and look what happens, right? So you imagine my hand is the club face. You can see how it showed me exactly where my hand hit the ground, right? So this thing is fantastic for doing that. It can also give you an idea of the strikes, because if your divot is kind of shifted, this way toward you, it's going to indicate a toe strike. If it's shifted away from you, it's going to indicate a heel strike. But again, it just gives you a general idea. I personally like to know exactly where I'm hitting it. I want to see on the face where I'm hitting it. And if you do those two methods that I talked about, either one of those, you're going to be able to see it. With this, it's not really it's going to give you an idea, like, oh, that was a little toward the toe or a little toward the heel. It's going to be hard to know exactly how much. So that's why this is good for an indication of that. So if you start seeing like these divots are not centered, right, then I would definitely get the foot power spray out and see where you're hitting it on the face. The direction of your divot, it can really be good for that too. So it can kind of give you an idea of if you're into out or too much out to in. But again, I like to use, if you can use some sort of TrackMan or launch monitor that tells you that, or if you can use like the blue brick to like make sure you're coming underneath. If you're swinging over the top, you'd want to be underneath. If you're too much underneath, what you would actually want to do, and this is kind of going back to your question, Tom. Sorry, I should have covered this, but if you are swinging too much underneath that consistency cone, what you'd want to do is kind of the opposite of a shallowing drill to kind of get you back on track. So the first thing you can do is just tone it down, right? And if in your effort to kind of tone it down, it's still not toned down enough, like meaning don't feel like you're swinging so much from the inside. You may not need to feel like you're coming over the top a little bit, but if that doesn't work, then basically what you do, you put your stick in the shallowing setting for whatever club you're using. And the three settings that we have on there are sandwich, 6-iron, and driver. That doesn't mean that those are the only clubs that you can use on there. So what I would say is, if you're for the sand wedge one, any wedge. So any wedge, if it has a wedge on it, it's a 60-degree pitching wedge, whatever, you can put it in the sand wedge setting. It's going to be almost perfect, right? Basically any iron, so 9-iron through hybrids, right? Any of the hybrids, you can put it in the 6-iron setting. It's going to be very, very close with all of those. And then for the driver, I would use that for like your driver and your 3-wood. The 5-wood, you probably want to, if you have a 5-wood or bigger woods, then you just use the 6-iron setting. That's going to be closer. So basically what I would do, there's another stick that you would put in right here that you'd point at the target. And what you do is you have the ball about right here, right? And if I over shallow it, well, I'm going to hit this stick, right? So I got to make sure that I'm swinging over over that stick. You may have seen Tommy Fleetwood doing a drill like this. If you got social media, he's got, there's been several videos out there. He works on that drill. He probably works on it every time he practices, if I had to guess. So, because he probably struggles with getting the club to shallow a little bit too much, right? So, that's that. You want it to be, you want your club path to be very neutral. So, you work on shallowing out the club if you're coming over the top. If you're over shallowing out the club, you kind of work on coming over the top a little bit, and then you tone it down to get the happy medium. So that's how you want to work through it. All right, keep the questions coming. We got about 10 minutes left here. Forgot about my protein shake. Let's get an update on this leaderboard. What we got here? So Rose is still at 6. Scheffler finished at 4. See if anybody climbed up. McElroy at 2. So Cameron Smith finished at 1. Patrick Reed finished at 1. Homo's at 1. It's good to see him playing well. I know he's kind of been struggling. He had departure with his caddy there. I'm sure that's tough on him because I think him and that caddy were like really good friends. Actually, I heard about, they were talking about how they were friends first, right? And if they wanted to always keep it that way. So, sometimes you got to do what's best for the friendship, right? Bryson's at 1. Lowry's at 1. Morikawa finished even. I think we already saw that. Niemann finished even. Let's scroll to the bottom, see if there's anybody who did not have a good day. Ooh, Dunlap. I wonder if that was his first Masters. Lucas Glover is at 6. No. I picked him because it was such a value pick. He's been playing so well. Dang. Hopefully he can finish strong here. That's too bad. I was really hoping. I think he's played well in it before. Dang. Horschel, he just seems to have a hard time playing well in the majors. I don't know what it is. I'm sure he's wondering the same thing. Hopefully he can come back and make the cut. Wouldn't mind. I think he's up there, a guy I think that can win a major. He hasn't ever put it together in a major yet. I'm not sure what his top finish is, but I don't think he's finished real high much, unless I'm missing something. Angel Cabrera back 4 over, won last week in the Champions Tour. That'd be interesting to see how he'd be doing. Excuse me. Mickelson finished 3 over. McIntyre 3 over. Man, I thought he was in pretty good form coming in. I thought he would play pretty well. Looks like a double on 7 kind of did him in. He was 1 under through 6, and then had double on 7. Chris Kirk, Weir, Fleetwood's 2 over, Rahm's 2 over, Hovland. Tell you what, Russell Henley, I kind of thought he would be a little bit of a dark horse. He's been playing really well this year, and another guy I think can win a major, and just hasn't. Old Captain Bradley, 2 over. Straka, I picked him. He's 1. Garcia's in pretty good form coming in. He's 1 over. Garcia's probably in the best form coming in since he won it going back. Good to see him playing better. Spieth usually plays well here. He's started 1 over. Looks like he had a pretty good front 9, but the back 9, I Looks like he had some bogeys there on the back nine. Or just didn't finish very well, so he doubled 10. Sung J M, I had him picked. All right, cool. Well, I got a few more minutes left here. Clay talked about it regarding Saturday. I find the video. Okay, try to find the video. So yeah, definitely can over shallow it, but just make sure that your camera angle is good. So just to kind of go back to that, if let's say that, because a lot of people, what they do is they set up the camera down the ball to the target line, and when you do that, you can be you can actually be steep and it'll look shallow. So if the camera angle is too much on this side, like you're looking from this direction for a right-hander, it's going to make it look like you are more shallow or less steep than what you actually are. And then if you have it too far behind you, so let's say I had it kind of lined up and it's looking this way, and it's kind of behind my heels, right? It's lined up over there. It's going to make it look like you are less shallow or more steep than what you actually are. So, yeah. So that's why the camera angle really makes a difference. All right, like I said, I'll stay on here a few more minutes if we have any more questions. We'll be back here tomorrow, though. Friday is tomorrow, so everyone must be watching the Masters. No worries. But if you want to watch the Masters and then post your questions and then watch the answer after the fact, it's totally an option there. Oh man, been standing all day. Back's a little tight. All right. Well, if we don't have any more questions, no big deal. We'll go ahead and wrap it up right there. We got 1 minute till 4. So I'm guessing we're not going to get a question in the next 60 seconds. So we'll wrap it up right there. Bring your questions tomorrow. I'll be happy to answer them for you. Everybody enjoy the rest of the Masters today, and I will talk to you all next time.